Welcome, friends. Today, this is a panel that is not about country radio. It's not about country music. It's not about radio. It's not even about the music industry. This is a panel that's about what it is to be human. What it is to be human inside of our industry, inside of country, inside of music, inside of country radio. This is a panel where we get a chance today to take something of the microcosm of each of our individual experiences and what you'll hear from the panelists, and to be able to use that as a template for how all of us move in the world as humans. We bring out some friends. Friends, want to come join us? If there's any indication of how difficult it is to be a human in today's world, it's that they decided to have a therapist play the role of moderator for this particular panel.
That's because we're all going to need therapy after this, right?
Dr. Chaim Newman, clinical psychologist, co-founder of Amber Health. Meet my friends.
Mike Preston, Program Director of KSCS and KPLX in Dallas-Fort Worth from Cumulus Media. Thank you.
Jennifer Johnson, President of Riser House Entertainment.
Kathleen St. Clair, Program Director at SiriusXM Pandora.
Reagan Donato, Day-to-Day Manager, 33 Creative, Off-Road Records.
Well, I like that. We're at a really interesting point in our industry's history where the first generations that pioneered so much of the magic that is country radio, country music, the music industry as a whole, are now part of at least 4, maybe 5 generations that are now doing this together, which is, it's remarkable, the longevity that this industry has had. But it also poses some unique challenges. And the truth is, in the world today, the world as a whole, it's hard to figure out how to integrate people that are different than us. And that's why this panel is so, for those of you who are sitting in this room, is in some ways it's so fundamentally important, because it's bigger than just our careers. It's about how we show up with people that are different than us, that have different sets of experience, and how we navigate that. And so I would start by, can't fix a problem until you know what the problem looks like. And so I guess my first question is, for each of you, what is the experience in your day-to-day life, in your day-to-day career, the ways that you see the challenges of us as an industry trying to integrate all of these different generations? Start with you, Mike.
Well, as the Gen Z on the panel, no, I think, we've had a few discussions before this meeting today, and I think that one of the big challenges is just kind of something we've talked about a little bit, which is just communication, or failure to, or perhaps sometimes the inability to know how to, right? And I think that what's natural to me may not be natural to everyone else on the panel. And I think that's one of the things that you have to overcome when you're managing or working with a disparate group of people, right, from across all age groups. And I think whoever chose this panel, Jennifer Miller, did a really good job of finding a group of people who represent a really good cross-section of ages, and I think that will, come to bear during the panel. But I think it's that, like I said, that knowledge of how to communicate best with the person you're talking to at that moment in time. And it gets really confusing in a group, right? When half the group gets what you're talking about and the other half is kind of going, huh, what? So, a lot of my jokes from the late 70s don't work anymore. So yeah, that's what I think is one of the big challenges I sense during the average workday.
Totally.
Yeah, and exactly what each generation values is so different, especially as a leader in organizing a whole group of people in an organization that all come from different generations. And Reagan, like what you value as a Gen Z, let's just go there. Like just because I was literally going to all of my Gen Zs in my company and going like, what do you value? And when we were talking earlier, you were hitting on every single one of those, and I'm always fascinated by it.
Yeah, I think the one thing that Gen Z really values is the work-life balance, right? We grew up in a world that COVID hit, and it was a very digital age, and we prioritize mental health over a lot. And we're very good at our boundaries. We come into work at 9, we leave at 5. And I think to some people of a Gen X or a boomer generation, to them, sometimes that can look like, hey, she's not really trying hard, she's not putting in the work, she's not working the hours. But to us, this is what we signed up for. We came, we did the job, and we're willing to work over the hours if we have to, but that's not what we're thinking about. And we talked about vacation too. If I have 20 vacation days, you best bet I'm gonna use all 20 vacation days. And that is just that's not a value that I think many other generations have. I've worked with a lot of boomers and Gen X who haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. I've worked with people who they beg them to take a vacation. So for me, it's almost like us as Gen Z, like we're feeling a little guilty, like, oh, can I have off the week of July 4th? We feel bad, but, it does need to be a little bit of a bridge there of, hey, we have these boundaries, and almost to kind of teach the older generations to have some boundaries too with work.
Yeah, and I'll say, I feel like at CRS every year we always have at least one panel that is addressing the issue of burnout, right? Like, how do we avoid it? How do we stop ourselves from, especially, when you're like a one-man band and you're wearing so many hats, feeling that burnout and feeling that pressure. And I think on one hand, there's a lot to learn from Gen Z and their boundaries and their respect for work-life balance and how that can help you have more longevity in your career. But at the same time, there can also be issues with the reality of a job, especially in an industry like this that is so 24/7, fast-paced, maybe doesn't always stick to the traditional confines of a 9 to 5, with your guaranteed vacation days, where there can start to be conflict when maybe it's the same people who are sacrificing personal time every time because they, maybe have that generational value that that's what they're going to do. But if there's someone who's always prioritizing their work-life balance and someone who isn't, then things might start to feel inequitable on your team.
Yeah, and I think that means that as leaders in an organization, you have to set expectations, right? And probably from the very beginning of someone coming into the organization, right? And I'm just curious, like Reagan, if I've said to you, that, hey, it's a 24/7 business, there are times we're on call, we're on deck, no matter what's happening, and there's going to be moments where it might interrupt something that's going on that you had planned or is going on. I mean, would that inhibit you from potentially taking a position because of those kinds of things?
I think
even if everything else about the job was perfect.
Yeah. We're in an industry where it is a 24/7 job, right? My job now, compared to the last one I had, is even more 24/7. So I think, we do have these boundaries and we prioritize, the 9 to 5 and the work-life balance. But there does come a degree where this is the job. This is our dream, right? Our dream is to work in the music industry. And if that's what it takes, I'll be there till midnight. I'll be there on Saturday. It's to Gen Z, it's almost like a sacrifice, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
So I want to ask a pointed question to all of you, which is, and I'm gonna reveal something candidly, which was like prior to sitting up here, I've never been in a country radio station in my life. No one's invited me. Hopefully someone will invite me after this to come take a tour at least.
There are a couple people here who could help you with that.
Which would be great. But I assume one of the things about being in radio is the entire job is communication, right? You are literally communicating with the masses all the time. Yet somehow communication inside of our offices can always be more challenging. And I'm curious, for each of my friends here, like the ways that the different generations communicate, how does that show up for you? Can you share an experience of a way that sort of, bangs into itself as you have an office filled with people who come from different sort of generations, and the ways they communicate with each other? How does that show up for you guys?
For me, Gen Z, one thing that I've really had to learn is other generations value you picking up the phone and calling them, right? I love to text, I love to go on Teams and send someone a message or even email, but especially my previous team was all Gen X or boomers, and they value the structure and the formal conversation, and hey, it means a lot. You gain respect by picking up the phone and calling somebody, so that's something that I'm grateful I learned early on because it's become a habit for me, but it is a challenge that Gen Z faces of if we just text you, sometimes it comes off like we don't care or we're not being intentional, but the truth is that's just all we know.
Well, to follow on that, I think I told the story of a person who worked for me. We had an issue, a technical issue, and when I got into the office, he told me about the issue, and I said, yeah, I saw it on the email. He goes, well, I texted the chief engineer, but he didn't respond. I said, okay. And then I emailed him, and he didn't respond. And Al Farb knows this story because he's sitting right there. He knows this. So I said, well, did you call? And it was like deer in the headlights. It was like, to your point, yeah. What does that mean, calling it? And that was the whole thing. It was just literally the blockade to doing the most, in what my mind would be, that was what it was in the old days. There was none of the other stuff, right? If something was broke, you pick up the phone and called someone immediately. And now it's like, log onto the website, go to the help desk, all that kind of stuff. And we put up all these barriers to the human connection. And so your point of learning that is really, I think, is important because there's clearly this issue going on where we've forgotten about just how to talk to each other.
And there's also an element of being in the business where I'm on the record side of the business, so it's our job to magnify an artist and to be that megaphone and to connect with fans, but not only connecting with fans, but it's also to make that artist as recognizable within the industry. I'm reaching out to you, letting you know about my new artist, or you about my new artist. And so when someone doesn't pick up the phone or have those relationships that, like maybe Gen X and or Boomer and X, and now millennials are developing, you've done an exceptional job. I feel like you're like light years away on that. But relationships are so important, and so picking up the phone is a skill that is, in my opinion, the most important skill that this younger generation that we can give, and also how to have difficult conversations. What I'm noticing is sometimes the younger people will come to me and they'll complain about something that someone said, but they can't go directly to that person and have a difficult conversation. And so I spend a lot of my time sometimes being the fireman putting out fires, or my managers putting out fires on little things that could have just been handled by not through text or email, or not the way they gave a side eye to someone in a meeting, but literally, and they're low-key texting can you believe what she just said? Or, that's just just go up to a person and have a difficult conversation. So these are skills that would be extremely, extremely beneficial for our generation. And as we're raising new leaders and we're having meetings where now, my younger generation are leading the meetings, and I think that's kind of leads me to you too. And I'm not moderating this, but I was thinking about what you had to say on earlier conversation about how you're having to lead among you being a younger person, being like a zillennial, I'll call it, like Z millennial cusp, and you actually leading people that are Z's and X and Boomer?
Yeah, I think, the youngest people on your team never experienced working in any sort of workplace environment pre-COVID, pre-Zoom, pre-hybrid work. So, of course, their communication styles are just for sure going to be different because of that. Their managerial styles, the way they like to be managed, the way they like to receive feedback, the way that they want to be air checked if they're, host talent. They probably want to do it over Zoom. They probably don't want to come and, sit in the studio and do it. Hosts that I'm working with that are, Gen X, Boomer, absolutely want to have those in-person conversations. And their style of communication and the way that they want to receive feedback is entirely different. And I think, too, being on the younger end of my team as well, there can be, I don't want to say challenges, but it can be something to navigate when you have people in your organization that are coming into leadership roles, when you also have them now maybe managing people on your team who just have a lot more experience than them, like are senior. They've been at that station, or they've been at that company, or they've been in the music industry for maybe multiple decades, and you're coming in as like, I graduated college. I have so much to teach you. Like, it can be weird to navigate that because you do want to give feedback and present yourself as an authority figure and genuinely, do what's best for your company and help everyone grow. But at the same time, learn each person's style and the way that they like to have those conversations.
Yes.
Should we put everybody on the spot right now? Just make them a little uncomfortable. Because in the end, right, country music's about stories. I'm wondering if each of you would be willing to share a story, not like in the conceptual, but a story in your own experience of when you sort of like banged into the generation gap and like a conflict or something that went really sideways with someone of a different generation that you were working alongside. Well, he's the award winner, so I guess we'll start with the award winner.
Yeah. Beauty before age, please.
I mean, of course. Like, I think that there's when you're telling a story, there's probably an example that you can pick from every day of your life. Working on a team, just the realities of working with so many different people. But I will say 100% guilty of needing to kind of learn the hard way to be the phone call person. And I will also say, kind of needing to learn the realities of, this is regular job, and I want to have my boundaries, and I want to have my workplace time, but there's going to be a broadcast on New Year's Eve every year at midnight, and I know that, and the reality of somebody's got to have no New Year's plans to be, ready to take the call, and to kind of go from being the, what do you mean I can't do my New Year's party, to, okay, I get to have this, really cool programming opportunity, working with CBS Big Bash to present this really, really cool show that we're the only people who are doing it. I think is kind of like an attitude adjustment that I had to learn, kind of like my more Gen Z traits, and kind of step into a more responsible role.
Thanks for sharing that.
I think for me, hiring, in my generation, our degrees were different. Like my degree, I was a chemist and going to med school, so I didn't have Belmont. I didn't even know that existed during that time. And so when you have all these people that have invested so much money into their education, and they're coming in and they have real bills in 2026 that look economically very different than they did back in the day, where I could work for free. So for me, I never had a real job. In the music industry, I went and represented songwriters. I did it for free. I said, you know what, this is my college education. I will work for free. I will do anything I can I will mow the grass. I will pitch your songs. You don't have to pay me anything. Let me earn it. And that was Gen X kind of mentality. And now we're in this opportunity where there's people that are educated and you actually can pay to go to college to do this. And now you're coming to me where I'm like, yeah, just work for like, free interns. Like, that's just where my mind was. And I'm like, no, they actually have bills to pay. And they need to start at a certain amount, but then, like, there's not enough experience to pay at that amount when I could pay just a little bit more for someone that has more experience. So it's like the balance of, like, trying to make sure that I give the newer generation an opportunity to have experience when they're brand new and get paid. And one new thing that we've tried, and it was actually, I have an intern that started with me. Her name is Roman. She started with me when she was 16. And I don't know if she's here. I don't know if Roman may be on vacation. Is she here? There she is. There's Roman. Roman started with me when she was 16. Before she chose not at that moment to go to college, she started to work with me. And so it was like amazing to be able to work with someone. It's given me the opportunity to work with someone younger that may not have the bills yet. And yet they're like she's just banking all this experience. And so that's been really fun to kind of have that experience. And that's been a solution to some of the problems, like still needing to give new people opportunity, but also working with some really young people.
Well, Roman, I'm jealous of the lack of student loans because I cannot relate there. I went to Belmont, but we love it. I think one thing that, we're going back to just the communication and the 9 to 5 and the boundaries. The word initiative comes to mind, and it's because when I was at BBR, which I think they're all back there, I love you guys. It was a very big company. Promotion was a lot of older people, love them all. But it's a lot of that trying to communicate and like learn the lay of the land, right? I grew up in radio. My dad's over there. Shout out. I'm shouting out everyone in this building. And I kind of went into my first job as promo coordinator, and I thought I had a pretty good grasp on what was going on. And I think it was a big learning lesson to me of like, hey, you need to be open and like willing to realize that what you know is just the tip of the iceberg. And a lot of Gen Z, they have a difficulty doing that and just admitting that, hey, we don't know it all. Like there's a lot more to learn. So I think that was, a big opportunity for me, just leaning on mentorship, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but just leaning on the other generations to really help me fill that gap.
I think that one of the experiences that I've had a couple of times, and I can think of one. I'll use my friend Al Farb again, who's out here. We were having a super animated discussion. Thank you, Al. We were having a very animated discussion, and a younger person walked in while the super animated discussion was going on. And after it was over, she was like, "Stop! What's wrong, you guys? What's wrong?" We're like looking at each other. What? What are you talking about? I was going to call HR. I was like, it was not anything bad at all. It was just animated, energized enthusiasm. But I think sometimes, and it goes back to the idea of the COVID era, and then how a lot of people came into the workplace not being with people every day, right? And not recognizing that all of the ways things happen during the course of a day, that emotions are like a wave, right? You're not just this all the time. Well, the doctor might be.
No, you'd make a great therapist, Mike.
But that was one of those moments. After she said it, we were kind of like, were we? And I'm like, no, it was just us being intense, excited, animated about something, and it was very clearly educational for that person to go, oh, this is what can happen as part of the creative process when you collaborate. I don't know that happens at an insurance company. Maybe it does, but I think in a creative business, music, radio, etc., I think that's going to happen more than it would be in another type of business. And it's interesting how I think sometimes as people come into the space, they need to understand that you're going to be exposed to lots of different scenarios and situations that might be foreign at first, but are completely normal.
And so what I'm hearing from all of you is, if you look at it generationally in terms of the places where things could go wrong, right, and the ways that conflict or disconnect could happen, communication, expectations around things, how people approach work-life balance, right, how people approach setting boundaries, right, all of these things, how people approach expression of emotion, right? All of these things could look different in ways that really could make it complicated to work in a workplace with people who are totally different than you, who come from a different culture, different generational culture. But then there's the opposite side of things, which is like it turns out that every generation, aside from its ways of being that bang into the other generations, also brings something to the table that's really unique and has the potential to really enhance the experience of every single other person in a workplace. So let's start with you, Reagan, and we'll go this way this time, which is like, what is one thing that you could identify that sort of like your generation brings to the table that's a strength that...
So much.
I agree, and you know, you could pick one maybe to start.
I think one of the things that we talk about a lot, it's almost the obvious answer, but it is the knowledge of social media and the digital age, and how, you know, we were talking today in the office about just identifying an audience for an artist. Who is listening? Who are the fans? And that is one thing that our generation is great at. We're on social media, we're online, we love music, we're always listening to music. You see people Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year, and it's, you know, 100,000 minutes listening to music. I mean, that's an insane amount. And it's an amount that, you know, I don't even think I hit that, but I just think, yeah, it's the identification of the audience and the digital era, and I think we really bring that, especially growing up in COVID. And, you know, it's a little bit of a joke now that 2020 didn't have a graduation, but we didn't. And we went to college with online classes, you know, and all we had was our phone. I mean, I brought my phone up here for notes, and I was like, I guess that's pretty Gen Z of me, so I'll just do it. But yeah, so that's what I'd say.
And, you know, I am, as Jennifer mentioned, like zillennial cusper, but I definitely feel like the millennials on probably your teams, and I feel like in my workplace as well, tend to be the people in the building who are bridging the younger generations and the older generations within the workplace. Because you've got, you know, I graduated college in 2019, so like just missed COVID, but I had friends, you know, who were in there. So it's like you see both sides, and you probably grew up still in the streaming age, but you know how to burn a CD should that ever be called upon you to do it. In the apocalypse, I think that will be my role. But yeah, I think millennials can be great connectors, not just, you know, on the tech basis, but also in these kind of communication bumper car zones that we've identified.
I think what I've loved most about even just going a few years up, everything that I learned was from the boomer generation. And it was, you know, just, my gosh, you know, work by experience. You didn't have to have a college education. You worked for free. You busted your butt. You worked 24/7. And that kind of like, and just the generosity of the knowledge that I gained from my mentors, right? And then that, in turn, for me as a Gen X, having the work ethic, not expecting to be validated or awarded, or, you know, I mean, you're receiving a really big award now. I mean, you just did. And,
Thank you.
And but I think we just, as an Xers, we really love relationships. We really love to develop people underneath us. We really love to be able to sit with this generation because you energize us. You have the love for music, you know, like I'm thinking about my interns right now, Roman and Jordan, and how they're like, they want to go to every show. They want to, you know, you guys want to, you want to just be at everything, and you have so many great ideas on how to connect with fans today. And then my millennials are the leaders in the company, and they're really keeping me on track because they're very good at HR and all the things. And so I love all of the generational opportunities that we have in our organization, but I think X is definitely the person that loves to pay it forward.
I think that the thing that boomers are good at bringing to the table is just the work ethic. And yes, it might violate work-life balance sometimes, but I think that we are the generation that is oftentimes the best example of what work ethic can be, and how it can can pay off. You know, I think about my own career and the hours that I've worked, the 24/7 nature of being a program director. It's like being a doctor. You know, if you didn't want to get a call at 3 in the morning, you shouldn't have been a doctor, right? It's kind of the same thing if you're a program director. It's 24/7 business. You have to expect it. But I take satisfaction from knowing that people around me get that I don't see this as work. That's the great part. See, I don't think of it that way. There's a rare moment, but my wife would tell you that it doesn't matter because he loves so much what he does. And that to me is some validation. But I think that I think it's good to have people who really are great at demonstrating the work ethic, because it can help people know what it might take to get somewhere. You know, I'll get one more thing on that. My dad always said, don't just do 100%. 100% is just the job description. If you want to stand out and be recognized, you have to give more. Now, whether that's 110, 120, or 200, that's up to you. But I think that having a great work ethic is one of the first things that will get you noticed, you know, as being a responsible person, and someone who, you know, your boss, your leader will go, wow, that's a person we should be really keeping track of.
Or wanting to work those extra hours that they're not required to do, but they're willing to go do that photo shoot or do that whatever they need to do.
Yeah, it's so, you know, like it's so interesting when you listen to it this way, and you're like, oh, whether it's like passion, whether it's the ability to connect others, whether it's the drive for relationships, whether it's the work ethic, like it turns out that there's something really remarkable that when we shift from the focus on what's different to the focus on what we can bring to support and enhance each other, it's like every one of these, you know, it's like you sit here embodying yourselves, but if we think of the four of you as representative of these generations, right, it's like they really bring things that are incredibly valuable to the workplace. And so what's it like for you, like when it works well? What does it look like? What are you doing in your workplaces that is working to sort of bridge the gap and to help integrate the different generations effectively?
Well, I don't even think that you need to limit it to your own workplace in particular, because Jennifer, you touched on something which I think is probably one of the most important things that we do between generations, which is mentorship. And obviously that is going to be a really huge thing in any industry that you work in, but in the music industry, mentorship is everything. I mean, this is a community of people that you know who you know, and you know is networking, and it's happening all this week, and it's happening between generations, and there's probably not a single person attending this conference who, when you say the word mentor, doesn't have someone that pops up in their head, and that someone is going to be from a different generation. You know, it just, that's the way that mentorship works. And I think that it's the most beautiful thing that happens between generations in our industry, because the one thing that we all have in common is that we're incredibly passionate about music. And I think that when you see someone and meet someone who maybe reminds you of yourself at a certain age, or is passionate about the same things that you are, be it live music or, you know, the way that fans consume things, and you step up and kind of volunteer to be that person who's donating your time and energy to helping the next generation, it's incredibly beautiful. And everybody should come to the Women's Mentoring Breakfast on Friday and see me.
Good pitch.
Yes. I think for me, I'm going to be the moderator again, but I'd love Jennifer to just talk about a little bit about the meetings you do with Gen Z and all the employees you have, just asking what their feedback is and how they're doing. One thing that we love is we love to know how we're doing, and we want to get better. Gen Z is, we really value that one-on-one connection and that mentorship, and we want to feel like we belong, right? So I loved what you said in a previous conversation about that.
Remind me a little bit what that was.
Sorry. Just have to meet with the Gen Z.
Oh, yes, thank you. Because we do a lot of things. But yeah, I love sitting with everyone individually if I can. I travel a lot, but, you know, even being able to sit down with, you know, Roman, how old are you now? Well, she's been with me since she's 16,
happy birthday.
guys. She'll be 20 next week. And just being able to sit down one-on-one and, asking you what you value, and you're telling me, hey, I value experiences. I want to be valued in the workplace. I want to bring value. And then sitting down with my millennial generation in the workplace, and they really want to do great work. They want to make a difference. They want to make their mark on this earth, and really, they want to mentor the younger people. So it's like all passing along, and being able to sit down one-on-one is extremely important, and seeing what each of them value, and being able to cater the work experience to what they value, but also instilling that we have a purpose. This is the vision of the company. This is the vision of the station, that we're all working together to ensure and see that vision through in the different ways that we operate.
I think mentorship is extremely important, and I think that especially on the radio side of things, as our business contracts and gets smaller, it doesn't appear as attractive to younger people today as it did when I started. Occasionally, you find someone who's got the bug, and to me, it's like when we spot one, we need to jump on it, right? So we have a person at our station. He's a kid who's 18. He loved listening to the radio station, was a big fan of one of our morning shows, came up to someone at an appearance, right, Al? And he was like, I want to get into this. And we helped him figure out how to get onto our promo team. And then he started hanging out in the studio, and we found out he wants to be on the air. So we're training him to be a board op. And the next thing I know, he's going in the production room, he's practicing voice tracking and things like this. I'll use Jennifer as another example. She was not in my department. She was in my promotion department. But she was not in the programming department per se. But I knew she had a passion for music. And so when Al and I would do music meetings, what would I do? I'd bring you right in, and we'd sit there and listen to an hour, listen to music, right? And because she knows, by the way, she knows all the hot stuff, in case you're looking. But was just another thing that I thought, look, she's really interested in this. We're going to get something out of this, and it's going to make her feel great that we're listening to her. And I think that's a great part of the mentorship thing. But I think back over the years to all the people that I feel like I've mentored, and it's amazing when some of it comes back. I was in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago for a wedding, and I got together with a guy who was my assistant program director in Seattle for about 8 years, and now he's a morning guy on a big station in San Francisco, and we had a great chat about. And he's quoting to me all the things I said to him back then, and I'm like, I don't remember, but I'm glad you do, right? That's a great thing. And then there's a guy here some of you may meet this year. His name is Jay Love. He's a new PD of Bay Country in San Jose, and he's just brand new into country, but he was another guy who was one of my APDs in San Francisco. And, all through the years we've always talked, and he's been extremely successful, but he's calling me again because now he's in our world, in the country world. And once again, I'm helping him try to understand. And he's wondering what this push week thing is, but that's a different panel. So, but yeah, so mentorship is really important. And I think if we're not, on the radio side especially, when we identify younger people who are really interested in it, that we don't try to encourage them and do everything we can to get them into it. It's hard to send them to a small market now because the small markets, they exist. There's just not any or very few opportunities there. So, or it's much harder anyway than it used to be. So, when you spot one, you invest a little time and see if they've got it. And if you sense it, run with it because it's only going to bring good things.
So I had a young lady that was when I started Riser House Records and publishing, it was me and 3 interns, and one of the interns is now one of the top people at Sony in A&R. The other one is managing a major country music artist. And the other one moved furniture in my building. She was just an intern from Belmont, and she worked nonstop, moving furniture into my building, working anything that I asked her to do. One time, someone asked her to jump into a lake and go swim sandwiches to Mitchell Tenpenny's boat without any kind of floating device or anything. And I remember one time when she literally jumped in the lake without a floating device and held one arm up, sandwiches to go deliver to another band, that this young lady would do absolutely anything for me, and that loyalty has just stuck with me. And now she is running my record label today. That's Megan Stottlemyre.
Shout out, Megan. I definitely feel like on the other side, I remember every single person who ever treated me with a sense of authority, like I could be in charge of something, or like my opinion mattered or my taste mattered on something when I was a brand new baby starting out in my career. Like, I remember the faces. I remember being an intern at SiriusXM when I was still in college, and my PD at the time inviting me along to like a weekly music meeting at Warner. And I remember James Marsh sitting and playing a song, and before anyone else spoke, he said, "I want to know what you think." And I will never forget like feeling like, oh, what? Like, my opinion on this matters to someone, like this is important. And that I think is probably where I caught the bug for wanting to continue with programming. And I think it's such an amazing way to, like you said, Mike, like develop young talent and people whose passion you really want to encourage.
I can't help but I feel like this is this wasn't on our list of questions, but I think just having the four of you with such a unique perspective and how effective you've been and are in your careers, I just got to ask it as we're talking about mentorship and being a mentor. Could each of you just super briefly share, it's like, what's one thing, who mentored you, and what's one thing you learned from them that sort of has shaped your career?
I'll go first. I'm not sure if he's here. I texted him, but he did not answer me as usual. Scotty O'Brien, I don't know if he's here, but we love him. He was a great mentor for me in my first job. I think, he was someone who was always willing for me to come get in the car and go with him, whether it was to SiriusXM to present an artist or drive up to Birmingham or Knoxville for a show and drive back, something that didn't cost anything, right? It's just giving me the experience. And I learned a lot from that. I learned, the importance of just showing up. I mean, the crew and the artists and the tour manager and the management team, all those people that we would go see, they do care. I mean, it means a lot that they're coming to a show, and now being, on a little bit of the management side as well, like, I see it too. Like, I see when the label comes out to things, and it means a lot. So, that's something that I learned from him, and just being able to, have that opportunity to, like, feel like you're a part of the team, feel like you belong, and like Kathleen said, I mean, feel like you matter and your opinion matters, even if, you're 20, 21 years old.
And, he's not here, so I can speak kindly about him, which I wouldn't if he were. But I would love to give a shout out to Johnny Chang at SiriusXM Pandora, who was at KKBQ for a long time beforehand. But he is someone that, since he came in, starting originally on the Pandora side, which is a DSP, and like I was like 100% SiriusXM, which is radio, came in and really treated our entire team like he was the one with something to learn, even to me. And I think throughout our last like 4 or 5 years on that team, developing it together, he has always kind of set that expectation that we have just as much to learn from each other, regardless of who has more experience, which I think is very, very difficult, and it's very cool.
Wow, that's really good. I had a mentor a while back that taught me everything about publishing, and I didn't know anything about publishing. I didn't go to school for it or anything, and he taught me everything. He also introduced me to everyone that he knew freely. And I think what I learned from my mentor was share everything that you know, don't gatekeep anything, be open with your relationships, help the generation before you meet anyone and everybody that they want to meet, and just enrich. He enriched my life so much and helped me to feel like he helped me learn how to make my first dollar in the music industry. And he taught me everything on the back end of publishing, and since then I've been a publisher for 20 years. It's changed my life. And the relationships, I tell everyone that works for me, hey, my Rolodex is your Rolodex.
I had a mentor early on in my career at radio. I was working in San Diego at a long-lost station called KS 103. I worked for a guy who was from Philadelphia. If you grew up in Philadelphia in the 70s, his name is Dave Parks. And Dave was a great PD. And the reason I thought he was a great PD is because I didn't know I wanted to be a PD, but he recognized it. And he asked me to do a task one day, which was just to write a promo after a promo meeting. And I did it, and I made sure it got produced and all that. And I enjoyed doing it. I'd never really done it, and I enjoyed doing it. And the next promotion meeting, I just took the notes, and I wrote the next promo. And I just kept doing it for a couple of weeks. I said, hey, Dave, I realize I'm writing the promos. Are you okay? And he goes, Mike, if you step on my toes, I'll be sure and let you know. And that was his way of saying, keep going. Keep going. You are doing exactly what I want you to do. And it was one of those moments, and I still think about that today because it was something that launched me into taking on more and experimenting. And if I made a mistake, he told me, but it was invaluable experience. But if he hadn't let me have that experience, I don't know if I would have been here today. So, it was one of the. It clearly rings still this moment. Very important in my career, and I'll never forget what he did for me.
You know, I want to tell you something. If you had sat in the rehearsal and the conversations we had in advance of this, and you watched just like how much everyone was caught in the my generation this and I'm that, and like it was so like weird and uncomfortable. It felt.
I thought it was awesome.
Yes,
I was excited about the badge. I was like, please let it loose. Like, let's roll.
Well, and what's interesting is when you look at it now and how there's like a connectedness, and it's almost like you could see the bridge between all the people, regardless of what age and what background they came from. And I think one of the things that's so telling about is, you know, if we're just willing to open and spend the time connecting and listening to each other, even when we come from different places, then something really special starts to happen. And so as we, you know, slowly move towards our close, and we'll hopefully have some time if there are any questions on the, what was it called? Text.
The Q&A?
Text groove.
Yes.
If there were any
Text
questions
to that
that
code that's on the
you
screen. If
yes,
it's up
sent
there.
in to the
Oh, no.
text groove that I was supposed to remind you about, but I forgot to remind you about. I want to just close by asking each of you to share for what would be a takeaway that you would want to impart to people who perhaps in their life or their workplace are struggling with that gap with people that come from a generation above or below them. What's one actionable takeaway that you would want to leave people that could help their experience as a human trying to navigate other humans be a little bit smoother?
Lean into their strengths, because each generation has, you have your strengths. And for me as a leader, I want to make sure that like I'm utilizing each person's strength and focusing on that more than the differences.
And I think on that note, it's important to know what's true facets of each generation, and it can definitely help you be a better leader and a better employee. But it's also really important to get to know everyone on your team on an individual basis, how they want to receive feedback, how they like to communicate. You know, generalizations are all well and good, and they're there for a reason, but getting to know the individual is key.
Yeah, I think for me, just be willing and open to learn and communicate. Gen Z, we have a thing where we are afraid to overstep. We're afraid to, you know, say something that we shouldn't say. And, you know, sometimes I wish I would just say, hey, is this okay? You know, and for my mentor or my boss or someone to tell me it is or it's not. But yeah, just be open and communicate and just, yeah.
Everything they just said. Seriously, no, that's exact. All of those things together are just such amazing takeaways. But I agree with Kathleen, especially. Get to know people a little bit. Go to Starbucks. Go grab quick lunch at Chipotle. Whatever it is. Just even getting out of the office for 20 minutes and just, even if you're going to talk about a project or something specific, it gives you another chance to just maybe get a couple of little glimpses into someone's persona and what's going on with them, and it might help you understand them just a little bit better. It might give you a clue onto if they're having an issue or and ways that you can help them. But having that ability to get them to know them just a little bit more than that superficial usual work thing can really, really be a way to enhance your personal relationship with them, and in that way, you both get more out of it, and you can probably be even more productive.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to say one more thing.
Do it.
Just to go off what you said, Mike, those coffees and those 20 minutes outside of the office, that means way more to us than you realize. I mean, anytime, even like we go out to lunch probably once a week where I work now, but every time it's still like, you know, it's nice. It's nice to have that family environment outside of, you know, the office. So yeah, that means way more to us than you guys know.
Yeah, be a human first. I want to tell you, it is hard to sit up here on a stage. It's anxiety-provoking for many. We're social mammals as humans, and so it's hard to do that. And in radio, where people are used to being behind the scenes and not necessarily the ones sitting on the stage, give it up for these four badasses right here. Thank you all so very much. Do we have any questions from the question machine? I'm not really sure how that...
1, 2, 1, 2. Hi. We do have to wrap, so I do have one really good question, so if we can make it super quick answer, but it is a really great question. The younger generation is very vocal on transparency, especially when it comes to salaries. In an industry that holds its cards close to its chest when it comes to how much money everyone makes, how do each of you navigate this area? Or what would you suggest to appease the younger generation without driving the management, typically the older ones, crazy?
Next question, please.
Commercial.
That's, you know what? It's a great question. It's really, really difficult, right? This is one of the most biggest challenges. If you met my market manager, you would know. It's a very different dynamic from my age group. It's never discussed. Where Reagan's age group, right?
It's discussed, yeah.
Everyone constantly, and it can cause issues because person A finds out what person B makes, and person A wants to know why they're not getting what person B wants to know why they're not getting what person A gets.
Or titles.
Right, all of that. So it is a huge challenge. I think there are some states now where when they run a job ad, they literally post the salary range. Right, not all states, but it's becoming more common. I don't think there's a really great answer for it, to be honest with you. It's very, very difficult. Especially on the radio side, there are these things called egos, and you know, so you're navigating egos. You're navigating, you know, people who've been around for a long time, and if they found out someone who had been there for a short time was making more or substantially more, it calls into so many different dynamics. And when you have a small team, it can cause even more friction. It's, you know, the days of having giant teams sadly are not here. So when you have like on KSCS, we have five total full-time people, plus me and 2 promotion people. That's not very many people. So if that friction comes up, it's palpable.
I will say that friction definitely applies more if you are a person who is managing a team. If you are a younger person starting out in your career, transparency around things like salary, the earlier you start, can only help you. I know that that's not the answer that the managers in the room want me to give, but if you are brand new, just starting out, and are not, you know, locked into where you're probably maybe going to be for the next 10, 15 years, I don't know, that's up to you. Knowing what's up can only help you.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I actually did not know that people didn't talk about salaries until I did it, and then it didn't go well. So it's an interesting thing because in our generation we are very transparent, and I think, you know, you have to be respectful and you have to be able to realize that you cannot be mad at people because they make a certain amount of money. But yeah, I think there's not really a right answer to it, but to me it's just it's discernment. You know, use it when you need to negotiate, but you don't really need to make it a conversation at the bar.
Yeah, definitely owning a business. I do not want people discussing salaries in a small team. That is not acceptable to me at all. And the reason is because it is turbulent, especially the smaller the team that you have. And to be able to quantify someone's value because they can do really phenomenal work, but they might do phenomenal work in an area that is not a revenue driver. And for me, I'm still on a P&L. I don't work for a market share business, and I'm not in a big team, so I can't have typical HR and organizational, it can't be perfect yet. Like, I'm not there yet. So having transparency from directly to the manager is key. When someone says, I need to hit these salary goals, generally I'm creative enough to say, okay, I can't pay you in this area this amount of money because you're capped out here. Your life trajectory, your career trajectory is going to be capped out here. How can I help you achieve your goal? Because you need to make this amount of money, and I want you to make all the money in the world. How can I help you find a solution within my organization, or maybe even a hybrid outside of my organization, to where we can get as creative as we can be so you can meet your financial goals for your family? I'm all about being creative in that aspect. I do respect, even though you're transparent, I do need to be transparent with me, but don't be transparent among the team.
Yeah, for sure.
Agreed. Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day, great rest of your CRS.